My name's Dana Morse. I am a Senior Extension Program Manager and the Aquaculture Lead for Maine Sea Grant, and I have a joint appointment, so I also work for University of Maine Cooperative Extension. I love my job. There's a lot to like about it. Aquaculture is usually referring to growing things in water, and that could be a tilapia, it could be a salmon, it could be a seaweed, or it could be an oyster.
Hi, I'm Chris Davis. I'm working here at the Darling Marine Center, work for the Maine Aquaculture Innovation Center, which I directed for about 20 years. And I also started an oyster farm called Pemaquid Oyster Company way back in 1986. Bivalve aquaculture is the farming of clams, mussels, oysters, or scallops. Those are the four principal groups of bivalves. And bi meaning two, valve refers to the shell, so having two shells that are held together, and that's principally to protect what's inside, which tends to be the part we like to eat if we eat bivalves.
My name is Jeff Smokey McKean, and I live in Walpole, Maine, just up the river a little ways. And I'm one of the owners and managers of the Pemaquid Oyster Company. Fisheries is going after the wild fish without knowing where they are. So we're planting, 500,000 or 1 million oysters on different beds each year, but we know where we put them and they don't go anywhere. So we don't have to look at a chart and decide where we might go fishing today. We know we go to the same spot every time until we deplete that section, and then we go to the next section and we alternate areas of our lease with plantings. So aquaculture is farming on the water. I guess it's the same difference as hunting and farming. It's aquaculture because we culture the animals. The working waterfront is access to the water with infrastructure. So this is a great example of a working waterfront right here. The Myers property in Walpole. This dock has been here for a long time. It's been rebuilt several times since I've been involved. We have 4 lobster boats, 3 oyster farms, a mussel farm, a seaweed farm, all using this dock. And so it's kind of a mixed use, and a couple of sailboats. So there's recreational use, there's lobster fishery, there's oyster farming, seaweed farming, and mussel farming all happening on this facility.
Working waterfront is essentially a waterfront that allows people access to the water, to the ocean, if they're making a living off the water. So it could be a clammer, it could be a lobsterman, it could be an oyster farmer, it could be a kelp farmer. But of the 3,500 miles of coastline that we have on the coast of Maine, I think it's less than 25 miles, and it's probably a lot less than that, of actual working waterfront, meaning access for people to the waterfront. The rest of that water frontage is privately owned, and that means that you or I may not be able to just go walk across that property to get to the water in order to go farming or to go lobstering or to go clamming. Working waterfront is providing access for people trying to make a living.
Hi, my name is Phoebe Jekulek. I am a postdoc here at the Darling Marine Center, University of Maine's Darling Marine Center, and I study scallops and scallop aquaculture and scallop fisheries. Historically, Maine's marine industries have been focused around fisheries. So right now, our industry is very heavily focused on lobsters. There used to be a lot more harvesting of actual fish, so specifically cod. There were boats that would take big nets out and catch lots of cod. There were big industries for herring. And these industries continue, they've just changed. We're seeing changes not only due to overharvesting, but also because we're in this changing environment. And so I think in response to that, you're seeing more of an effort for aquaculture. I would say an effort and an opportunity for aquaculture to grow, not to replace those fisheries, but to support and diversify the opportunities for harvesting and continuing to utilize our natural resources that we get from the ocean.
12,500 years ago, we would have been under about a mile of ice right here. As the glaciers receded, it just ground up the coastline. and it exposed some areas and it buried other areas between dirt and sand and gravel, and it left it looking the way that it does. Maine's coastline is pretty varied. So anybody who takes a look on a navigational chart or Google Earth or something like that, they're going to see kind of this mostly beachy area or largely beachy and rocky area, but it's kind of straight without too many indentations in the south and the west. Then you hit kind of the mid-coast, and there's a lot of this in the coastline with a lot of variation, including the Damariscotta River. Then you hit Penobscot Bay, which is its own separate entity, if you will. Then you kind of hit a series of islands and other rivers and stuff like that. And then you hit sort of the bold coast, if you will, by Cutler. And then you hit Passamaquoddy and Cobscook Bays. So when you take that in total, you get a lot of variation in salinity, in temperature, in flow, in exposure, in phytoplankton production. And it just so happens that the Damariscotta is really good for things like oysters and clams. Above here is not that great for scallops, or not that great for mussels, but you go around the corner and you go down a little bit, then it is good for mussels and scallops. So you have all this variety.
If you talk to a wild harvester or if you talk to an aquaculturist, they both feel responsible for the resources that they're harvesting and growing. I don't think that you get into the industry without feeling some responsibility.
It's different farming on the water than it is farming on the land because we don't own the water. So we're leasing the water from the public trust, and I always say we should be held to a higher standard because it's not our farm. It's temporarily our farm, but we try to keep it looking neat. We try to pick up any gear that gets away so we're not, there's not stray gear on the shore. We just try to be respectful of the other people using the water. So there's more responsibility, I think, with farming on a public resource.
The shellfish farmers are a big advocate for good water quality. So we're out there trying to protect the water quality, because if the oysters aren't safe to eat because of poor water quality, well, that's going to hurt everyone.
When we started farming, there were large areas of this river that were closed to shellfish harvest because of pollution, mostly individual houses with septic systems that weren't operating, or they had overboard discharges. When we started, we teamed up with a local land trust and helped do water quality tests. And we could discover areas that had pollution, and we could then go to the landowners and say, we've identified a pollution source coming from here. So let's look at your septic system and see what we can do to make it operate better.
One of the things that I definitely observe about aquaculture in the last 15 years or so is that there's opportunity really around the spectrum. So for example, we're sitting here on the Damariscotta River right now. So I'm going to look around and I see some aquaculture gear over there in the cove at the Darling Marine Center. We're on the Damariscotta River, so there's a lot of housing here. There are lobster boats working in the distance. On the shore here, you might find clam diggers or worm diggers. And if you look a little bit, you'll find work, you'll find jobs, you'll find things that need attending to in all of those areas.
One really cool thing is that there are new species always being kind of put in the lineup for, can we grow this, right? So can we grow razor clams? That's some research that's happening here at the Darling Center. Bay scallops, how do bay scallops do in Maine waters? So I think aquaculture provides a really unique opportunity to think about not just the species that we know already grow well in our waters, but other species that can create new economies as well in Maine.